Hello everyone, I am Hossein Azizollahi and welcome to Pragmatic Programming channel. In this episode, we're going to talk about variables, constants, and functions. Variables are a storage location in memory, and the constant is an immutable value. We have some variable types in C#. One of them is int, which it allocates 4 bytes in memory. So as an example, we're going to define a variable called number. I write it number, and that's it. We have defined a variable called number, which has a type of int, which it can contain from -2 billion up to around 2 billion. It's not exactly 2 billion, it's a little more than that. And the reason that it contains from -2 billion to 2 billion is that because it is a signed variable. So how can we define a variable that starts from 0 to 2 billion? We should write something called uint number 2. What is the uint? It stands for unsigned int. How big of a number can it store? It can store from 0 to around 4 billion. And the first bit is for understanding that whether it's a positive or negative. So with changing it from 1 to 0, the computer can understand that is it a positive or a negative. So when we define the type of the variable as unsigned, we mean that don't care about the first bit. So the computer will consider all bits of 4 bytes for its calculation. There are other variable types for numbers like, let's see, float, that you can store some float numbers like 12.45. The reason that the compiler shows us an error is because the compiler by default says, okay, you cannot store a double variable type into a float variable type. So we have to identify that this is a float. We have to cast it to the float like this, float, or there is an easier way to do it by just adding a suffix of f. The next variable, as you guessed it, is double. So it's the same like the float, just by writing double. Another important variable is called a string. A string. Yeah, let's change the variable name. Let's call it variable. And let's change the initialized value. Though we can have no value for initialization, but I prefer to have something called Hossein Azizollahi. And now to define this variable as a constant variable, we just need to add the const keyword. We just need to add const keyword at the start of defining the variable. Now, once you try to change the variable's value, let's write the variable I, you cannot do it. The compiler shows an error and it doesn't allow us to change the value of variable. As you saw, for a normal variable, it's not the case, right? Let me show you something here. Number, and let's change this to 12. Wrong type, int, here, console.write line, and the number. Now we just change the number to 13, and now console.write line the number. So it shall show us two lines of code. First that it shows 12 and then 13. Let's see how it goes. As you see, 12 and then 13. Now you should know that C# is case sensitive. For example, for this variable, if we write int number 13, we have now two completely different. We can see it by the same example here. Console the write line and then console.write line the number with lowercase n. As you see, 12, 12. Though you cannot define a variable with the same name. For example, if I change here the number to number with lowercase n, the compiler shows us an error because you're defining a variable with the same name that you just defined it in the above code. Now let's talk about what is a function. A function is a routine that does the job. For example, in here, the main is a function of a program class. Every function has a returning value. In here, it is void, which means return nothing, but it can be int or it can be long or whatever type that you need to return. Though in here, we rarely need anything to return. And it has a name. In here, we called it main, and it has many or 0 parameters. Let's define a function together. Now I want to define a function that will return my name, and then I will write it to the console. So static, I will talk about this as static in the future videos, just skip it for now. String retrieve my name, return, I say, console, write line, variable, or we can write a string, my name is retrieve my name, and in here, my name. Now let's change this to void main because it won't work with a long. And now let's run it. Hossein. It was a very easy function to define, but it can be very complicated in the future. Now let's just improve our code a little bit more, writing string last name and have another parameter, input parameter, string first name, and let's just change this function name to build the full name. Now in here I would like to write the first name plus a space and then plus last name. Build the full name here, that the first name. Let's receive it from the console. Console.write enter your name, your first name, then console.read line, first name. And now let's write the console.write enter your last name. And variable last name, the same that the ID suggested. And here we go. Let's just put the first name as the first argument, and then the last name, the second argument. It shall build our full name. Let me change this variable name. Always keep in mind that the names you choose shall be meaningful. I could simply write here FN for the full name, but that's the way how losers code. So for here, the best is writing the full name. Now console.write line of the full name. That's it. Now let's see how it works. Name, Hossein. Last name, Azizollahi. Yes, my name is Hossein Azizollahi. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you liked and subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so you will be notified once I publish my next video.